If money is no object, the MAWL C1 is the last word in civilian IR laser aiming modules. It has extremely potent illuminator output with both a wide CQB flood and a tightly focused spot available at the touch of a button. B.E. Myers accomplished this feat with a classic technique known as brute force. They just put a cluster of IR emitters on the front of the device, each with a set focus level. And that's a big part of why the MAWL is such an expensive device. It's basically multiple IR laser aiming modules in one body. But B.E. Myers isn't the only company to have this idea. Steiner used to make a device called the dbal A4, a 4-function laser aiming module that did pretty much the same thing. The dbal A4 is a civilian legal device with powerful LED-based IR emitters for both long-range spot and close-range flood illumination. It also has an onboard white light illuminator, making it a true all-in-one multifunction aiming laser. Just like the MAWL C1, the dbal A4 carried an extremely high price tag. MSRP was right around $3,000, but they are now discontinued. Which isn't that surprising. Even though the dbal A4 can technically do everything a MAWL can, it just doesn't do it nearly as well. Let's take a closer look at how the dbal A4 actually works.
Hey, if you ever take anything we say seriously, consider we decided to fly halfway across the United States, miss 3 flights, and then set up the most inconceivable bullshit gun of all time. Please listen to me. I need Patreon money.
The dbal A4 looks like a behemoth, but it actually weighs a little bit less than the dbal D2. Coming in at 12 ounces, it's barely any heavier than a MAWL C1, but since it has an onboard white light illuminator, the overall package weight on the front of your gun is going to be substantially less. The right side of the device is pretty much the same as Steiner's D2 and A3. It has the co-aligned Viz and IR lasers with one set of adjustment turrets. The left side of the device contains all of the illuminators. On the top is the IR spot emitter, on the bottom is the white light Viz emitter, and then on the extreme edge is the CQB IR flood emitter. The back of the device has the typical Steiner mode select switch, as well as 2 fire buttons, one on each side, kind of low slung in a saddlebag configuration. Very similar to the dbal D2, however the buttons are larger and mirrored so you can use them with either hand. The dbal A4 is powered by 2 CR123 batteries that are loaded in the side rather than the front, so this may be a better than average pick for a gun with a fixed front sight base. The button on top of the device is the toggle button, and that's the one that you use to switch back and forth between the CQB flood IR illuminator and the long-range spot IR illuminator. And that's pretty much where it all goes wrong for the dbal A4. The IR spot illuminator is very similar to the MAWL C1's long-range illuminator or the dbal D2 on maximum focus. It's LED based, so even though it's civilian legal, it has a very high level of output and a very clean illumination pattern. Likewise, the CQB flood illuminator is very similar to the CQB illuminator on the MAWL C1 or a dbal D2 if you happen to have one of the flip-over filters from villain weapon systems. The problem is that there is no mode in between these two extremes, and switching between them is very clumsy. With the dbal D2, you can dial the focus ring on the IR illuminator to find a middle ground that'll work for your environment. With the MAWL C1, you also have a toggle switch that allows you to switch between close, medium, and long-range illuminator patterns. With the A4, you're kind of stuck with 2 illuminators that really only work in very specific situations. The CQB flood illuminator is so massively blown out, it's basically 180 degrees of illumination, that you can't really use it near cover or any type of foliage or anything that might get between you and the target, because you're going to reflect all of that illumination off of something close to you and just blast it right back into your eyeballs. The long-range illuminator has a bright spot at the center of the beam, similar in intensity and size to a focused D2 or MAWL, which is too narrow and too powerful to be used at close to medium range. The A4 does have a wider and dimmer outer ring that should help a bit at intermediate range, but the center hotspot is still pretty overwhelming. That extra spill also means that even the spot illuminator causes pretty bad splash off of nearby terrain or cover, which hampers its usability at extended range. It's kind of the worst of both worlds. The end result is that most of the time, both illuminators will cause you to blind yourself and not actually help you identify or engage the target. The dbal A4 allows you to progressively dim any of the illuminators with a combination of buttons, but you do have to be in the right mode, and you have to hold down 2 buttons at the same time and wait for it to step down. This is not something you're going to be doing on the fly, so you pretty much have to make a choice well in advance what sort of output levels you want. That probably means turning the flood illuminator down a bit and turning the spot illuminator down a lot. With the dbal D2, anytime you find that your spot illuminator is overpowering, just a quick partial turn of the head will make the illumination pattern more diffuse. With the A4, you're most likely going to have to give up on the highest power level of the spot illuminator because it's almost never going to come in handy. You can also dim the white light illuminator as if you would ever want less than the relatively unfocused 500 lumens that the A4 is capable of pushing out. The focusing lens on the white light illuminator is so short that the A4 can't put out a lot of candela. Also, it's so short that it can't even focus it down into a circular beam. It's fucking square.
Hop, what the fuck happened, man? I've got a night vision device that doesn't work, and I've got a laser with 2 unusable illumination modes. What?
One last thing to mention about the dbal A4 is that, like the A3, it has 2 remote switch ports, one of them for the regular activation and the other one for the vis override. When a laser module receives an input on the vis override port, it automatically outputs the visible component of the device, regardless of the current position of the mode select switch. Manufacturers like Unity Tactical make a triple downlead remote switch so that you can have one button to activate both your white light and the vis override on your laser module. I think that mostly makes sense as a panic button for law enforcement, especially SWAT. If you've got a ballistic face mask or a gas mask on and you all of a sudden have to access your white light, well, hey, I guess the vis laser may as well come along for the ride. For everybody else, I think vis override is just unnecessary complexity. However, on the A4, it actually kind of makes sense because this is your white light. The vis override port on the dbal A4 means that you can have 2 different remote switches, one button to activate your IR component and one button to activate your vis component. It is, however, a bit of a negligent discharge hazard. If you've got the lens caps removed and you're in the IR mode, well, touching the vis override button is going to blast out white light and vis laser. But without it, the only way to switch over to visible output in a hurry would be to fiddle with the mode select switch at the back of the device, and I guess you don't want that either. So that's the dbal A4. Like basically every discontinued product that I cover on this channel, it was too big, too complicated, and too expensive, and that's why they don't make it anymore. If you factor in the added white light component, then I guess the size and weight are not that big of a negative. I mean, it only weighs barely more than a dbal D2, and a lot of that's because it's got an extra CR123 inside. Also, the white light component means you can kind of subtract about $500 from the cost, because that's about what it would cost to get a 500 lumen Surefire scout light and remote switch and all that stuff. But at the end of the day, people rave about the MAWL C1 not just because of its output level, but because those 2 fire buttons give you immediate access to 2 extremes of IR illumination. You can technically do all that stuff with the dbal A4, it's just really hard to access. I'd say it's more convenient to twist the focusing ring on a dbal D2 than it is to access different modes on the A4. And if you get the Villain Weapon Systems flip over diffuser cap for the D2, then it's even easier. If you're thinking about the dbal A4 as a nice all-in-one unit that can be put on a PDW or other compact weapon, well, there's something much better for that, and it's the Surefire XVL2 IRC. It's about half the price and about half the power level, but it's going to be a lot more useful in that role. There's something really satisfying to me about taking a look at a discontinued product and totally understanding why it was discontinued. It makes me feel, at least temporarily, like we still live in an ordered universe. That's all we got for today, guys. Thank you very much for watching. If you'd like to support this channel, please subscribe and check out the links in the video description. If you have any questions, let me know in the comments, and I'll see you guys next time.
Alright, apologies for this.
Hit!
This is so retarded.
Hit!
God damn it, I hate myself for this. Whee!
Hit!
I lost track of where I was.
You got one hit, you got to get me a hit over here on the side. Target. Hit! Now back to the big target.
One more?
Give me the big target. And that little fucker.
This is really dumb.
Hit! Alright, move on to the step. Hit! 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 One more hit, and you can move on to the reverse one. Hit! Alright, move back. Hit! Hit! Move back to the big target. Hit! Hit! All right, go to a port. Circle.
Nice, right?
Yeah, circle. Hit! Hit! Back to the big target.
Yeah, that's
Hit! Little target. Hit! Next hole. Hit! And par.
That can is red hot. Under nods.
Yeah, pretty clear if you could drop that hammer and turn off the laser.